On the day I buried my wife Beatrice, I expected grief to be the only thing trying to kill me. I was wrong. 3 hours after I watched her casket lowered into the cold earth, her billionaire boss called my personal cell phone. He did not offer condolences. He whispered 5 words that made my blood freeze. "Get out of the house." I thought he was insane. I thought grief had finally broken my mind. But then he said something else. "Do not drink the tea your daughter-in-law just made you. If you want to live to see tomorrow, come to my office. Use the service entrance." When I arrived at Vane Tower 40 minutes later, breathless and shaking, I expected to see a grieving old CEO. Instead, I saw a gun on the mahogany desk and a man tied to a chair in the corner. That man was my own lawyer. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever realized that the people you share blood with are the ones you need protection from. My name is Henry. I am 68 years old, and for 40 years I worked as a quality control engineer. My job was to find cracks in structural foundations before buildings collapsed. I was good at it. I could spot a microfracture in steel from 10 yards away. But I missed the rot in my own family until it was too late. The collapse began at the cemetery. The sky over Chicago was a flat, bruised gray, threatening snow. It was fitting. I stood by the open grave, my hands clasped in front of me, staring at the polished mahogany box that held the only woman I had ever loved. Beatrice, my bee. She was the one who remembered birthdays. She was the one who smoothed over arguments. Without her, I felt like a man standing on a wire without a balancing pole. I waited for my son Brandon to step up beside me. I waited for a hand on my shoulder, a word of comfort, anything. Instead, I heard the sharp, rhythmic clicking of heels on the concrete path. Click, click, click. It was a sound of impatience, not mourning. Vanessa, my daughter-in-law, stood 3 feet away from me. She was wearing a black dress, but it was too tight, too short-cut, to show off her figure rather than show respect. She was typing furiously on her phone, the light from the screen reflecting in her oversized Gucci sunglasses. I leaned in slightly, needing to feel close to someone, and that is when I heard them. They thought I was deaf. Or maybe they just thought I was already dead, a ghost haunting a future they were eager to claim. "This is dragging on forever," Vanessa whispered, her voice a sharp hiss. "I have a nail appointment at 4. And did you see the plot? It is huge. We could fit 3 of him in there." "Shh," Brandon hissed back. But he didn't tell her to stop because it was disrespectful. He checked his watch, a heavy gold Rolex I knew he couldn't afford. "Just let the old man have his moment. We need him pliable for the signing tonight." The signing. The words hung in the cold air like exhaust fumes. I stiffened. My wife's body wasn't even cold, and they were talking about paperwork. I turned my head slowly. Brandon met my eyes and immediately composed his face into a mask of tragic sorrow. He sniffed loudly, wiping a non-existent tear from his cheek. "Dad," he said, his voice trembling with a performance worthy of an Oscar. "She looks peaceful, doesn't she? We are here for you, Dad. Whatever you need." I looked at my son. I saw the expensive suit that was a little too tight around the waist. I saw the shifting eyes that couldn't hold my gaze for more than 2 seconds. I spent my life teaching him integrity. I taught him that a man is only as good as his word. Somewhere between college and meeting Vanessa, he had forgotten everything. "Thank you, son," I said. My voice sounded like gravel grinding together. "I just want to go home." Home. The word seemed to trigger a spark in Vanessa's eyes. "Yes, Dad. Let's go home. We have so many people coming over to pay their respects." I didn't want people. I wanted silence. I wanted to sit in Beatrice's knitting chair and smell her perfume on the throw pillows. But I was a passenger in my own life now. They ushered me into the back seat of Brandon's leased BMW like a piece of fragile luggage. When we pulled into the driveway of the house Beatrice and I had bought 30 years ago, my stomach turned. There were cars everywhere. Strangers were walking across my lawn. The front door was wide open. Music was playing. Not somber classical music. It was some generic pop playlist, low but upbeat. "This isn't a wake," I muttered as I stepped out of the car. "It's a party. It's a celebration of life, Henry." Vanessa corrected me, linking her arm through mine. Her grip was tight, controlling. "We want to focus on the positive. Beatrice wouldn't want us moping. Beatrice would have hated this. She was a private woman. She loved quiet evenings and strong tea. She hated crowds. But I didn't have the energy to fight. I walked into my own living room and felt like an intruder. People I barely knew were holding wine glasses using coasters Beatrice had hand-painted. A man I think was Vanessa's personal trainer was leaning against the mantelpiece, knocking over a framed photo of our trip to Maine. He didn't even pick it up. I navigated through the crowd, heading for the kitchen to get a glass of water. That was when I saw the bags. 3 large black industrial trash bags sat in the hallway near the stairs. They were bulging. I stopped. My engineer's brain analyzed the shape of the objects inside. The sharp corner of a box, the soft curve of fabric. I reached out and untied the knot on the nearest bag. Inside was Beatrice's winter coat, the blue wool one she wore every Christmas. Underneath it was her collection of vintage cookbooks, the ones with her handwritten notes in the margins. "What is this?" I asked. My voice was low, but it cut through the chatter in the hallway. Vanessa appeared instantly, as if she had been tracking my movements. "Oh, Dad, don't worry about that. We are just helping you declutter." Declutter. I pulled the coat out of the bag, clutching it to my chest. It still smelled like lavender and her. "You are throwing away her things." "We haven't even read the will yet." Brandon stepped in between us, placing a hand on my shoulder. He squeezed. It wasn't a comforting squeeze. It was a restraint. "Dad." "Listen," he said, his tone condescendingly slow, like he was talking to a toddler. "Mom had a lot of junk. You are going to be alone here. You don't need all this clutter gathering dust. We are doing you a favor. We are clearing out the space so you can breathe. Space to breathe. Or space to stage the house for a sale." The thought hit me with the force of a physical blow. They weren't cleaning. They were erasing her. "Put it back," I said. I was shaking. Not from grief, but from a rage that was starting to kindle in my gut. Vanessa rolled her eyes. She actually rolled her eyes. "Fine. We will deal with it later. You are just emotional right now. Go sit down in the den. I will make you some tea. You look pale." I retreated. I didn't go to the den. I went to my home office at the back of the house. It was the only room with a lock. I turned the deadbolt and leaned against the door, gasping for air. My house, my sanctuary, it had been invaded. I looked around the room. My drafting table, my old schematics. And on the desk, my phone buzzed. It was a private number. I usually didn't answer unknown calls, but something inside me, some instinct honed by years of anticipating structural failures, told me to pick up. "Hello, Henry." The voice was gravelly, authoritative, and familiar. It was Richard Vane, Beatrice's boss for 20 years, the CEO of Vane Enterprises. Richard I slumped into my desk chair. "Thank you for the flowers. It has been a hard day." "Listen to me very carefully," Henry Richard said. He wasn't using his polite CEO voice. He sounded urgent, intense. "Are you alone?" "Yes, I locked the door." "Good. Do not unlock it. And whatever you do, do not drink anything they give you. Not water, not tea, nothing." I frowned, holding the phone tighter. "Richard." What are you talking about? I am grieving. I don't have time for riddles. This isn't a riddle, Henry, Richard snapped. Beatrice came to me a week before she died. She gave me a file. She told me to open it only if she passed away suddenly. I opened it this morning. My heart hammered against my ribs. Suddenly, Beatrice died of a heart attack. She had a history of high blood pressure. It was natural. What was in the file, Richard, evidence, he said. Henry, Beatrice didn't just die. She was helped. And you are next. They need you out of the way to liquidate the estate. The world tilted on its axis. My son. My own blood. I looked at the family photo on my desk. Brandon at graduation, smiling. That is impossible, I whispered. Brandon is... He is weak, yes. But he isn't a killer. He is desperate, Henry. He owes money to people you do not want to meet. And that wife of his is pulling the strings. Listen to me. I have security footage Beatrice uploaded to a private server. I can't explain it over the phone. You need to get out of there. Now. A knock on the door made me jump. The doorknob rattled. Dad. It was Vanessa. Her voice was sweet, dripping with synthetic concern. Dad. I made you that tea. It's Earl Grey. Your favorite. Open up. I stared at the door. The tea. Earl Grey. How did she know I hadn't drank Earl Grey in 10 years? Beatrice drank Earl Grey. Vanessa didn't know me. She didn't know anything about me except my bank account number. Henry Richards' voice in my ear was a lifeline. Do not open that door. Is there another way out? The window, I breathed. There is a fire escape from the old renovation. Take it. Go to the main road. Call an Uber. Do not use your own car, they might have tracked it. Come to Vane Tower. Service entrance B. Code 7734. Do you understand? I understand. I hung up. I stood up. My knees popped. I was 68 years old. I had arthritis in my left hip. But fear is a powerful lubricant. I moved to the window, sliding it open as quietly as I could. Dad. The knocking became pounding. Brandon. He locked the door. He is having an episode. Break it down. I heard the heavy thud of a shoulder against the wood. Brandon played football in high school. The door wouldn't hold forever. I scrambled out onto the metal grate of the fire escape. The cold wind bit through my thin suit jacket. I didn't look back. I climbed down, my heart racing faster than it had in decades. I dropped into the bushes in the backyard, scratching my face on a branch. I ran. I ran past the cars of the strangers drinking my wine. I ran past the garden Beatrice had planted last spring. I ran until my lungs burned, and I was 3 streets away. I called a rideshare from a neighbor's driveway. The driver was a young kid playing loud rap music. I didn't care. Just drive, I told him. Downtown. 40 minutes later, I stood in front of the service elevator at Vane Tower. I punched in the code. 7734. It beeped green. The doors slid open. I rode up to the penthouse floor in silence, watching the numbers tick up. 40, 50, 60. When the doors opened, Richard Vane was waiting for me. He looked older than I remembered. His silver hair was disheveled, his tie undone. He didn't shake my hand. He motioned for me to follow him. We walked down a long corridor lined with modern art to his private office. He swiped a keycard and pushed the heavy oak doors open. Sit down, Henry, Richard said, pointing to a leather chair. I walked in, but I didn't sit. I froze. In the corner of the room, tied to a chair with zip ties, was a man in a wrinkled gray suit. There was a strip of duct tape over his mouth. His eyes were wide with terror. It was Gavin Mercer. My family lawyer. The man who had drafted my will. The man who was supposed to protect my interests. What? What is this? I stammered, pointing at Gavin. Richard, you can't just tie people up. This is kidnapping. This is an interrogation, Richard said calmly. He walked behind his desk and picked up a heavy file folder. He tossed it towards me. It slid across the polished wood and stopped at my fingertips. Read the label, Henry. I looked down. The label was handwritten in Beatrice's elegant script. Operation Golden Years. I opened the folder. The first page wasn't a legal document. It was a transcript. A transcript of a conversation between Gavin Brandon and Vanessa, dated 3 months ago. Vanessa, how long until the old man kicks the bucket? We can't wait 5 years. The interest on the loans is killing us. Gavin, we can speed it up. If he is declared mentally incompetent, Brandon gets power of attorney immediately. We can put him in a state facility. The cheapest one. Brandon. He has a heart condition, like Mom. If he misses his meds, or takes the wrong ones, it happens all the time to seniors. The room spun. I had to grip the edge of the desk to keep from falling. They weren't just waiting for me to die. They were planning to execute me. Gavin started making muffled noises behind his gag. Richard ignored him. Beatrice found this, Richard said softly. She installed a listening app on Brandon's phone when he came over to fix her iPad. She knew Henry. She knew they were coming for her. And she knew they would come for you next. But why, I whispered. Why didn't she tell me? Because she knew you, Henry. You are a good man. You see the best in people. You would have confronted them. You would have tried to reason with them, and they would have killed you right then and there. Beatrice needed time to build a fortress around you. Richard walked over to a wall panel and pressed a button. A section of the bookshelf slid away, revealing a steel safe. A vault. She didn't just work for me, Henry. Beatrice was my chief of internal security for 30 years. She managed the company's Black Ops Fund. She wasn't just a secretary. She was the smartest operator I ever met. And before she died, she moved all your liquid assets. He spun the dial on the safe. Click, click, click. The door swung open. Inside, there wasn't cash. There were hard drives, stacks of documents, and a single sealed envelope with my name on it. Your son thinks he is inheriting a house and a pension, Richard said, pulling a pistol from a drawer and placing it on top of the file. He is wrong. He is walking into a trap. But to spring it, you have to go back there. Go back, I looked at Richard like he was crazy. You told me to run. I told you to run so I could brief you. Now you have to go back. You have to play the part they wrote for you. The confused, grieving, helpless old man. You have to let them think they have won. Because the moment they sign that deed, Richard smiled, but it wasn't a nice smile. It was a predator's smile. Beatrice's final gift to you triggers. And trust me, Henry, it is nuclear. I looked at the gun on the desk. I looked at the lawyer tied up in the corner. And then I looked at the envelope with Beatrice's handwriting. I reached out and took the envelope. I didn't open it yet. I felt the weight of it. It felt like a weapon. I took a deep breath. The engineer in me took over. The part of me that analyzed stress points and structural integrity. The grief was still there, but it was being paved over by cold, hard resolve. What do I have to do? I asked. Richard handed me a small, transparent earpiece. Put this in. I will be listening. And take these. He handed me a bottle of pills. Placebos. Swap them with your heart medication. Vanessa has already replaced your real ones with amphetamines. If you take one of hers, your heart explodes. I took the bottle. My hand didn't shake. I will call you an Uber, Richard said. Go back. Apologize for running off. Tell them you were confused. Tell them you are ready to sign whatever they want. I stood up. I buttoned my jacket. I wasn't Henry the retired engineer anymore. I was Henry the actor in the greatest performance of my life. Send the car, I said. I have a funeral reception to attend. As I walked to the elevator, I glanced back at Gavin. He was sweating through his shirt. I paused. I hope you are comfortable, Gavin, I said. Because when I am done with you, a zip tie and a chair will feel like a luxury vacation compared to where you are going. The elevator doors closed. I was going back to the House of Wolves. But this time I wasn't a sheep. I was the shepherd. And I had a wolf trap made of steel. The car ride back to my own house felt like a transport to a federal prison. I sat in the back of the Uber clutching the small orange bottle of sugar pills Richard had given me. My thumb traced the ridges of the child-proof cap. This was my weapon. This was my shield. The earpiece in my left ear hummed with a faint static, a constant reminder that Richard was listening, recording, and watching my back. But he wasn't the one who had to walk through that front door. I was. I checked my reflection in the dark window. I messed up my hair, pulling a few strands loose. I untucked my shirt on one side. I rubbed my eyes until they were red and irritated. Then I did the hardest thing I have ever done. I poured a tiny splash of cheap whiskey, which Richard had thoughtfully provided not into my mouth, but onto my collar. I needed to smell like a failure. I needed to smell like a man who had tried to drown his grief and lost. When the car stopped, the house was dark except for the living room. The party was over. The strangers were gone. Now it was just the vultures picking at the bones. I took a deep breath, let my shoulders slump forward, and stepped out of the car. I made sure to stumble on the first step of the porch. I grabbed the railing, letting out a loud, pathetic groan. The front door flew open before I even reached for the handle. Vanessa stood there, silhouetted by the hall light. She wasn't wearing her funeral black anymore. She was in a silk robe that probably cost more than my first car. Her arms were crossed, her face twisted in a mask of annoyance that she didn't bother to hide. "Where the hell have you been?" she hissed, grabbing my arm and yanking me inside. "We have been calling you for 3 hours. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it was? People were asking where the grieving widower went. I had to tell them you were having a mental episode." I let her pull me. I made my legs heavy, uncooperative. I blinked rapidly, trying to focus on a point just past her left ear. I went to see her. I mumbled, slurring my words intentionally. I just wanted to see B one last time. But the bar didn't have her favorite wine. Brandon appeared from the kitchen. He was holding a tumbler of scotch. My scotch. The 18-year-old single malt I had been saving for my 70th birthday. He looked at me with a mixture of disgust and relief. "He is drunk," Vanessa Brandon said, taking a sip of my whiskey. "Look at him. He smells like a distillery." "Jesus, Dad. Mom is in the ground for 6 hours, and you are already hitting the bottle." I leaned against the wall, sliding down until I hit the floor. I put my head in my hands. It wasn't entirely an act. The exhaustion was real. The betrayal was real. "I am sorry," I whispered, letting my voice crack. I don't know what to do without her. My chest, it hurts." Vanessa scoffed. She stepped over my legs like I was a pile of dirty laundry. "Get him up, Brandon. We can't have him sleeping in the hallway. It ruins the feng shui. Besides, we need him lucid for tomorrow. The notary is coming at 9. Brandon grabbed me under the armpits. He was stronger than he looked, but he was rough. He hauled me up and dragged me toward the living room. He didn't guide me. He manhandled me. He dropped me onto the leather recliner, the one Beatrice used to sit in to read her mystery novels. The leather groaned under my weight. I need I need my medicine, I stammered, patting my pockets with trembling hands. My heart is racing. Vanessa rolled her eyes. She walked to the mantelpiece where a row of pill bottles stood. Here, she said, tossing a bottle at me. It hit my chest and fell into my lap. Take it, and then go to sleep. We are tired of babysitting you. I picked up the bottle. It looked exactly like my heart medication. Same label, same doctor's name, but I knew what was inside. Amphetamines, stimulants. If I took these in my condition with my blood pressure already spiking from stress, I would be dead by morning. Cardiac arrest, natural causes. A grieving husband's heart just gave out. It was the perfect murder. I turned my body slightly away from them, pretending to struggle with the cap. In a sleight of hand that would have made a magician proud, I palmed the toxic bottle and swapped it with the placebo bottle from my jacket pocket. I popped the lid of the safe bottle, shook out 2 sugar pills, and dry swallowed them. There, I gasped, letting the bottle drop to the floor. I took it. I will be fine. Just let me rest. Good, Brandon said. He didn't offer me water. He didn't ask if I needed a blanket. He just turned off the main overhead light, leaving me in the dim glow of a floor lamp. Go to sleep, old man. I let my head loll back against the headrest. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I focused on my breathing. In for 4 seconds, hold for 4, out for 4. I had to mimic the rhythm of deep sleep. I added a small, ragged snore for effect. For a few minutes, there was silence. Then I heard the clink of glass against glass. Do you think he is out? Vanessa's voice? Sharp. Clear. No longer whispering. He is out, Brandon replied. He took a double dose. Plus the booze, he will be lucky if he wakes up at all. Don't say that, Vanessa snapped. He has to wake up. He has to sign the deed first. If he dies tonight, the house goes into probate, and we have to wait 6 months. We don't have 6 months, Brandon. The loan sharks are already texting me. They want the $50,000 by Friday. I kept my breathing steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. $50,000. My son had gambled away $50,000. He will sign, Brandon said. Did you see him tonight? He is a wreck. He is pathetic. He can't even wipe his own nose without Mom. I will put the paper in front of him tomorrow, tell him it is for the insurance, and he will sign it just to make me stop talking. He has always been soft. Soft. That word cut deeper than any knife. I thought of the double shifts I worked to pay for his college. I thought of the times I stayed up all night helping him with his science projects. I wasn't soft. I was a father. But to him, love was just a weakness to be exploited. I hate this house, Vanessa said. I heard her walking around the room, her heels clicking on the hardwood. It smells like old people. It smells like mothballs and cheap soap. As soon as the ink is dry, I am calling the contractors. We are gutting everything. That hideous kitchen gone. The garden, I am paving it over. I want a patio with a fire pit. My garden. Beatrice's roses. The lemon tree we planted on our 25th anniversary. She was going to pave it over. You can do whatever you want, babe, Brandon said. His voice was getting closer to where I sat. He was standing right over me. I could smell the scotch on his breath. Just get me the money. Once we sell this place, we settle the debt, buy that condo downtown, and put him in the state home. I already looked up the one on 5th Street. It is cheap. They have a bed available next week. The state home on 5th Street. I knew that place. It had been cited twice for elder abuse. It was a warehouse for the forgotten. A place people went to die alone, surrounded by the smell of urine and despair. That was the retirement plan my son had for me. Are you sure he won't put up a fight? Vanessa asked. Look at him, Brandon laughed. A short, cruel sound. He is drooling. He is done, Ness. He has been done for years. Mom was the only thing keeping him vertical. Without her, he is just a waste of space. Honestly, we are doing him a mercy. Mercy. I felt a hand on my shoulder. Brandon was shaking me, testing me. I let my head flop to the side, my mouth hanging open slightly. I forced myself to remain completely limp. "See out cold," Brandon said. "Come on," Vanessa said. "Let's go upstairs. I can't stand looking at him. It is depressing. And don't forget to grab the rest of the jewelry from the bedroom. The pawnbroker opens at 10. I heard their footsteps retreating. I heard them climbing the stairs to the bedroom I had shared with Beatrice for 40 years. I heard the door close. Only then did I open my eyes. The room was shadowy, but my vision was crystal clear. I wasn't drunk, I wasn't confused, and I certainly wasn't soft. The sadness that had been weighing me down all day began to evaporate, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. It was the same feeling I used to get when I inspected a building foundation and found a critical flaw. You don't cry over a cracked beam. You reinforce it. Or you condemn the structure and tear it down. I sat up slowly, careful not to make the leather squeak. I reached up and tapped the earpiece. "Richard." I whispered, my voice barely audible. "I am here, Henry." Richard's voice was instant. Clear. Calm. I heard everything. "Did you record it, every word?" "The admission of the debt. The plan to defraud you. The intent to harm. It is all on the server." "Good," I said. I stood up. My legs felt strong. I walked over to the mantelpiece and picked up the photo of Brandon that sat next to the clock. It was taken when he was 10 years old, holding a fish he had caught. He looked so innocent then. I looked at the boy in the picture, and I said goodbye to him. The man sleeping upstairs wasn't that boy. He was a stranger, a predator. "What is the next move?" Henry Richard asked. I set the photo down face down. "I am going to check the traps," I said. Beatrice hid cameras in the bedroom. If they are looking for jewelry, they are going to trigger the motion sensors. I need to see exactly what they are taking. "Be careful, Henry. If they catch you awake, they won't." I cut him off. "They think I am a ghost. They think I am already dead. Let them think that. It makes it easier to haunt them." I took off my shoes, moving silently in my socks across the carpet. I wasn't a retired engineer anymore. I was a spy in my own home. I crept toward the hallway, toward the stairs, toward the truth that would destroy what was left of my family. And God help me, I was ready to pull the trigger. The morning sun filtered through the bay windows Beatrice had insisted on installing 10 years ago. It illuminated the dust motes dancing in the air, oblivious to the conspiracy unfolding beneath them. I sat at the head of the oak dining table, the same table where I had taught Brandon how to solve quadratic equations, and where I had held Beatrice's hand as we planned our retirement. Now it was a negotiation table, and I was the hostage. The smell of bacon and freshly brewed coffee filled the kitchen, a domestic perfume used to mask the stench of betrayal. Vanessa was humming as she moved around the island, flipping pancakes. It was a performance, a grotesque parody of a loving daughter-in-law making breakfast for a grieving father. "Good morning, Dad," Brandon said, placing a plate in front of me. He was already dressed in his best suit, the navy blue one I had bought him for his first interview. He looked sharp, professional, and entirely hollow. "Eat up. You need your strength. Today is a big day." I looked at the pancakes. They were slightly burnt at the edges. I picked up my fork, letting my hand tremble just enough to make the silverware clatter against the china. I needed them to see the frailty. I needed them to see a broken machine, not a man. "I am not very hungry," I mumbled, pushing a piece of bacon around the plate. I didn't sleep well. The house. It feels so empty without her. "I know, Dad," Vanessa said, pouring herself a cup of coffee and sitting opposite me. She didn't look at me. She looked at her phone, then at Brandon. That is actually why we wanted to talk to you. We have been thinking about your future. We don't want you to have to worry about anything." Brandon cleared his throat. He reached into his briefcase, which was sitting on the floor, and pulled out a thick stack of documents. He placed them on the table with a heavy thud. The sound echoed in the silence of the kitchen. "What is that?" I asked, squinting my eyes as if I couldn't focus. "Just some paperwork for Mom's insurance," Brandon said, his voice smooth, rehearsed. "And some standard updates for the house title. You know how the city is. They need to update the records now that Mom is gone. It is just a formality to make sure you are protected." Protected. The word hung in the air, heavy with irony. He slid the stack toward me along with a heavy, expensive fountain pen. "Just sign where the little yellow sticky notes are," he said, pointing to the bottom of the first page. "We have already reviewed everything with Gavin. It is standard stuff." I reached for the reading glasses I kept in my shirt pocket. I put them on, slowly adjusting the frame on my nose. I looked at the document. The header was folded over, obscured by a paperclip. But I didn't need to see the header. I recognized the layout. I recognized the density of the paragraphs. This wasn't insurance paperwork. This was a quitclaim deed, a legal instrument used to transfer interest in real property. If I signed this, I wasn't updating records. I was signing away my ownership of the house. I was making myself a tenant in my own home, subject to eviction at their whim. My heart hammered against my ribs, but my face remained a mask of confusion. I leaned in close to the paper, my nose almost touching the ink. "The print is so small," I complained, my voice whiny and thin. "Why do they make the print so small? I can't read this, Brandon." "What does this say?" Paragraph 4. "Grantor releases all claims." Brandon's jaw tightened. He exchanged a quick, agitated glance with Vanessa. "It just means you are releasing the insurance company from liability, Dad," he lied. "It is legal jargon. Don't worry about the fine print. That is what we pay Gavin for. Just sign the line. We have a notary coming in 20 minutes to stamp it." I looked at him. My son. Lying to my face about a legal document. I remembered teaching him the importance of reading every contract before signing. I remembered him sitting at this very table reading his first car loan agreement. I had been so proud of his diligence then. "Where'd that boy gone? I don't know," I said, pushing the paper away slightly. "I think I should wait. My eyes are blurry this morning. Maybe I should take this to my optometrist first, or have Richard look at it. He knows about business." Vanessa slammered her coffee cup down. Coffee sloshed over the rim, staining the white tablecloth. "Oh, for God's sake, Henry," she snapped. Her mask of kindness didn't just slip. It shattered. "We don't have time for you to drag this around town showing it to your senile friends. Richard Vane is a busy CEO. He doesn't care about your little house insurance," Vanessa Brandon warned, but she cut him off with a sharp wave of her hand. "No, Brandon. We are not doing this. We are not playing games." She turned her cold, predatory eyes on me. "Henry, listen to me. You are going to sign these papers. Today. Right now. Do you know why? Because you can't afford this house. The property taxes alone are $20,000 a year. The maintenance. The heating. Do you think your little pension covers that?" I shrank back in my chair, feigning fear. I have savings," I stammered. "Beatrice and I. We saved." "Beatrice is dead," Vanessa shouted. The words were like a physical slap. The kitchen went silent. Even Brandon looked shocked by her venom, but he didn't stop her. She leaned across the table, invading my personal space. Her perfume was overpowering, a sickly, sweet floral scent that made me want to gag. "She is dead, Henry, and you are alone. You are an old man with a heart condition who can barely walk up the stairs without wheezing. If you don't sign this, do you know what happens? The state takes the house to pay for your medical bills. You lose everything anyway. We are trying to save the asset. We are trying to keep the house in the family. We are trying to help you. She pointed a manicured finger at the signature line. Sign it. I looked at the pen. I looked at the paper. I looked at my son, who was staring at his shoes, refusing to meet my eyes. He was a coward. He was letting his wife bully his father out of his own home because he was too weak to pay his own gambling debts. I reached for the pen. My hand shook violently. I wasn't faking the tremor this time. It was rage. Pure white-hot rage coursing through my veins, but I had to channel it. I had to turn it into incompetence. Okay, I whispered. Okay. I don't want to lose the house. I will sign. I picked up the pen. I hovered the tip over the paper. Vanessa let out a breath she had been holding. Her shoulders relaxed. She thought she had won. She thought the checkmate was on the board. I moved my other hand to pick up my coffee mug, intending to take a sip to steady my nerves. I watched their eyes. They were glued to the pen. They were mesmerized by the ink tip that was about to give them $1 million asset for free. I chose my moment. I let my wrist spasm, a sharp, jerky movement that looked like a neurological misfire. My hand knocked the full mug of scalding hot coffee. It didn't just tip over. It launched. The dark brown liquid surged across the table like a tidal wave. It washed over the stack of documents. It soaked the quitclaim deed, instantly turning the crisp white paper into a brown, soggy mess. The ink began to bleed immediately. "Oh no!" I cried out, dropping the pen and jumping up, knocking my chair backward. "Oh, I am so clumsy. My hand, it just jumped," Vanessa screamed. It was a high, piercing shriek of pure frustration. She grabbed a napkin and frantically tried to blot the papers, but it was useless. The paper was disintegrating under her fingers. "You idiot!" she yelled, throwing the sodden napkin at me. "You stupid, clumsy old man, do you have any idea what you just did?" That was the original. We don't have another copy printed. I stood there wringing my hands, looking the picture of remorse. "I am sorry. I am so sorry. I can dry it off." "Dry it off," Brandon roared, standing up. His face was red. "Dad, it is a legal document. You can't submit a coffee-stained rag to the county clerk. We have to get Gavin to draft a whole new set. We have to reschedule the notary." This sets us back 2 days. 2 days, I thought. I had bought myself 48 hours. Vanessa was pacing the kitchen, her hands in her hair. "This is unbelievable." 2 days. The payment is due on Friday. Brandon. If we don't have the title transfer recorded by then, the loan doesn't fund. She stopped pacing and turned to me. Her eyes were no longer just angry. They were hateful. They were the eyes of someone looking at a cockroach. "You know what, Henry?" she said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly calm register. "Maybe this is a sign. Maybe you really can't take care of yourself." What do you mean?" I asked, clutching the back of my chair. "I mean, look at you," she sneered, gesturing at the coffee puddle. "You can't even drink a cup of coffee without destroying things. You are a danger to yourself. And quite frankly, I don't think you are safe in this house alone." She walked over to the refrigerator and pulled a magnet off the door. It was a flyer for a pizza place. She threw it in the trash and then leaned against the counter, crossing her arms. "I have a friend who works at Sunny Meadows," she said. My blood ran cold. Sunny Meadows wasn't a retirement community. It was a state-funded warehouse for the indigent elderly. It was on the outskirts of the city next to a waste treatment plant. It was famous for 3 things: bedsores, sedation, and a high mortality rate. "Vanessa," Brandon started, but his voice was weak. "Shut up, Brandon," she snapped. "Dad, if you don't sign the new papers the second Brandon brings them home tonight. If you spill coffee or lose your glasses or have another one of your little episodes, I am making the call. I will have you declared incompetent, and I will have you in a shared room at Sunny Meadows by the weekend. You will spend the rest of your life staring at a beige wall, eating pureed peas, and wondering why you didn't just sign the damn house over when you had the chance. She stepped closer until she was inches from my face. Do we understand each other, Henry? I looked into her eyes. I saw the abyss there. There was no love, no empathy, just a calculator where a soul should be. I understand, I whispered, looking down at the floor. Please, not the home. I will sign. Just bring the papers back. I will sign. Good, she said, stepping back. She looked at the mess on the table. Clean this up. Brandon, come on. We have to go to Gavin's office and get a reprint. We are going to be late. They stormed out of the kitchen. I heard the front door slam. I heard the BMW engine roar to life and speed away down the driveway. I stood in the silence of the kitchen. The coffee was dripping off the edge of the table, pooling on the hardwood floor. Drip, drip, drip. I didn't clean it up. Not yet. I walked over to the window and watched their car disappear around the corner. I reached up and adjusted the earpiece. Did you get that? I asked, my voice steady and cold. Loud and clear, Henry Richards' voice replied. The threat of institutionalization. The admission of the loan deadline. It is all recorded. That was the final nail, Henry. We have enough to bury them. Not yet, I said, turning back to look at the soggy mess on the table. They want a signature. I am going to give them one. But it won't be on a deed. I walked over to the trash can where Vanessa had thrown the pizza flyer. I dug it out. Beneath it, buried in the coffee grounds, was the wrapper of the bacon she had cooked. I stared at the trash. I am going to clean this mess up, Richard. But first I have a phone call to make. I need you to set up the meeting. Tell them I found the money. Tell them I found Beatrice's secret account. Are you sure? Richard asked. Once you dangle that bait, there is no going back. They will come at you with everything they have. Let them come, I said, grabbing a rag to wipe the table. I grabbed the soaking wet quitclaim deed and squeezed it in my fist, wringing the brown liquid out of it like dirty water from a sponge. I am not the one who should be afraid of the dark anymore. I threw the wet ball of paper into the sink. It landed with a wet thud. The game had changed. They wanted my house, fine. I would invite them into my parlor. But they were forgetting one thing about old houses. Sometimes the foundations are built on secrets, and sometimes the walls have teeth. The silence that followed the slamming of the front door was not empty. It was heavy, vibrating with the echoes of the threat Vanessa had just delivered. Sunny Meadows, the state home. They had played their final card, revealing the extent of their cruelty. They believed they had left a broken, terrified old man trembling in the kitchen, staring at a puddle of coffee. They were wrong. As the sound of their BMW engine faded down the street, the tremor in my hands vanished instantly. I stood up straight, my spine snapping into alignment. I wiped the coffee from the table with a single decisive motion. The performance was over. The investigation was about to begin. I did not go to the liquor cabinet. I went to the basement. I walked past the boxes of holiday decorations and the old bicycles, heading straight for my workbench. It was dusty, neglected since I had retired, but my tools were still there, organized in their red metal chest. I picked up my multimeter, a high-lumen tactical flashlight, and a set of precision screwdrivers. I wasn't just a husband looking for his wife's diary. I was a structural engineer looking for a fault line. Richard had told me Beatrice installed cameras, but he didn't say where. He knew that if he told me everything, I might react too quickly. He wanted me to see the truth with my own eyes. He wanted me to find the rot myself, so I would have the strength to cut it out. I started in the master bedroom. It was painful to be in there. The room still smelled of Beatrice's lavender lotion. Vanessa had already begun to colonize the space. Her cheap fashion magazines were piled on Beatrice's nightstand, and a bottle of her cloying perfume sat on the vanity. I scanned the room thinking like Beatrice. She was pragmatic. She was the head of internal security for a billion-dollar company. She wouldn't hide a camera in a teddy bear or a plant. She would hide it in something functional, something that had a constant power source. I checked the smoke detector. Nothing. I checked the alarm clock. Standard. Then I turned to the television mounted on the wall opposite the bed. It was a new Model 1 Brandon had insisted we buy last Christmas. I shined my flashlight into the ventilation grates on the back of the screen. There it was. A tiny glint of a lens no bigger than a pinhead integrated into the manufacturer's logo bar. It was professional grade, hardwired. I moved to the closet. If there was a camera, there had to be a local storage unit or a transmitter. Beatrice didn't trust the cloud completely. She always wanted a hard copy. I felt along the back wall of the walk-in closet behind the rows of my old suits. I tapped on the drywall. Hollow. Hollow. Solid. I used a small knife to pry at the baseboard. It popped loose with a soft click. Behind it was a small fireproof safe box, recessed into the wall studs. It was a keypad model. I didn't need to guess the code. It was the date we met. August 12th, 1974, 081274. The lock beeped green and the door swung open. Inside, there was no money. There were no jewels. There was a single silver iPad Pro and a black notebook. My hands steady until this moment began to sweat. I took the device and the book to the bed. I sat down on the side that used to be mine, the side that was now cold. I opened the notebook first. It was her handwriting. Sharp, angular, rushed. November 15th. Brandon asked for another $10,000. Said it was for a business investment. I tracked the transfer. It went to an offshore gambling site. He is drowning, and Vanessa is handing him the weights. December 3rd. Vanessa asked about the life insurance policy again. She tried to make it sound casual, but her eyes were hungry. She checked the expiration date on my heart medication bottle when she thought I was sleeping. December 20th. I am scared, Henry. Not of dying, but of leaving you alone with them. I feel heavy. My chest hurts more often. I went to the doctor and he said my levels were erratic. I am taking the pills, but they don't seem to be working. I think someone is tampering with them. I installed the system today. If something happens, I need proof. I closed the book. A cold dread settled in my stomach. Tampering. It wasn't just negligence. It was active malice. I picked up the iPad. It required a fingerprint or a passcode. I tried the date again. It unlocked. The screen was filled with video files. They were labeled by date and time. I scrolled to the bottom, to the last file. The date was 3 days ago, the day Beatrice died. I hesitated. My finger hovered over the play button. Did I really want to see this? Did I want to watch the moment my world ended? But then I heard Vanessa's voice in my head threatening to put me in a home. I heard Brandon calling me soft. I pressed play. The video was high definition, the audio crisp. It showed our bedroom. Beatrice was lying in bed reading. She looked pale. It was around 2:00 p.m. I was out at the grocery store. I remembered that day. I had gone to buy ingredients for her favorite soup. On the screen, Beatrice dropped her book. She clutched her chest. She let out a gasp, a wet, rattling sound that tore through my heart. She reached for the nightstand for the bottle of nitroglycerin pills we always kept there. Her hand swept across the wood. The bottle wasn't there. The door opened. Vanessa walked in. She was wearing her workout clothes, holding a green smoothie. She stopped at the foot of the bed. She watched Beatrice gasping, clutching the sheets. She didn't run to her. She didn't call 911. She took a sip of her smoothie. Help, Beatrice wheezed. Her voice was barely a whisper. Pills. Vanessa walked slowly to the vanity across the room. She picked up the small orange bottle. She shook it. The rattle of the pills echoed in the silent room. "Looking for these?" Vanessa asked casually. Beatrice reached out a hand, her face twisting in agony. "Please, Vanessa, please." "You know," Vanessa said, leaning against the dresser, examining her fingernails. "Brandon and I had a long talk last night. We are really tired of waiting. The market is crashing and we need cash. This house is just sitting here wasting equity. And you are just taking up space." Beatrice tried to sit up, but she collapsed back onto the pillows. Her breathing was becoming shallow, rapid. Vanessa walked over to the bed. For a second, I thought she might have a spark of humanity. I thought she might give her the medicine. But she didn't. She placed the bottle on the high shelf of the bookcase 6 feet off the ground, way out of Beatrice's reach. "You should have just signed the power of attorney last month," Vanessa said softly. "It would have been easier. But you always had to be so stubborn. You always had to be in control. Well, look at you now. Who is in control now?" Beatrice's eyes rolled back. Her hand fell limp off the side of the bed. The gasping stopped. There was silence. Vanessa stood there for a full minute, watching, checking. Then she walked over to the nightstand. She picked up the book Beatrice had dropped and placed it neatly on the table. She smoothed the duvet cover. Then she took the pill bottle from the shelf, wiped it with the hem of her shirt to remove her fingerprints, and placed it on the floor just under the nightstand, as if it had rolled off. She pulled her phone out. She composed her face. She practiced a look of shock in the mirror. Then she dialed. 911, help it. Is my mother-in-law. I think she is having a heart attack. I just found her. Please, hurry. The video ended. The screen went black, reflecting my own face. I sat there for a long time. I didn't scream. I didn't throw the iPad against the wall. The grief that had been drowning me for 3 days suddenly evaporated. It was replaced by something else. Something cold and hard and sharp. I had spent 40 years in construction and engineering. I knew that when a building has a structural failure, it is a tragedy. But when a building is brought down by controlled demolition, it is a crime. This wasn't a death. It was a murder. My wife hadn't died of natural causes. She had been executed by a woman who wanted a kitchen renovation and a man who was too cowardly to stop her. Brandon, my son. He wasn't in the room, but he was in the house. I checked the other videos. 10 minutes after the ambulance arrived, while the paramedics were working on Beatrice's body, the camera caught Brandon and Vanessa in the hallway. "Did you do it?" Brandon whispered. "She is gone, Brandon. It is over. We are free." He didn't cry. He didn't ask how. He hugged her. He hugged the woman who had just watched his mother die. I stood up. My knees didn't creak. My back didn't hurt. I felt a surge of energy that I hadn't felt in 20 years. It was the adrenaline of the hunt. I walked into the bathroom and splashed cold water on my face. I looked in the mirror. The sad, lonely widower was gone. Staring back at me was a man who had nothing left to lose. I went back to the closet and put the iPad and the notebook into my briefcase. I engaged the lock. Then I took out my phone and dialed Richard. Henry, came the voice. "Did you find it?" "I found it," I said. My voice sounded strange to my own ears. It sounded dead. "And it is a homicide, Richard. They let her die." Vanessa withheld the meds. She staged the scene. There was a long silence on the other end. I heard Richard take a shaky breath. "I am sorry, Henry. I am so sorry. I suspected, but seeing it is different." "Do you have the copies?" I asked. "Yes." The server backed up the footage in real time. "We have it all. Good. Call the FBI contact you mentioned, but tell them not to move yet. Henry, you can't be serious. We have the evidence. We can arrest them now. No, I said. Arresting them is too easy. They will get lawyers. They will plead insanity or emotional distress. They will drag this out in court for years. I don't want them in a holding cell. I want them destroyed. I want them to lose everything before the handcuffs go on. What are you planning? They want a signature, Richard. They want the house. I am going to give it to them. I am going to give them exactly what they want. And then when they think they own the world, I am going to pull the floor out from under them. Set up the meeting for tonight. Tell them I am ready to sign the deed. And tell Gavin to be there. I want all the rats in one cage. Henry, this is dangerous. If they suspect you know, they don't suspect anything. I cut him off. They think I am a senile old man who spills his coffee. They think I am soft. I looked down at the wedding ring on my left hand. I twisted it. I am going to show them just how hard I can be. I hung up the phone. I walked downstairs to the kitchen. The coffee stain was still there on the floor. I didn't clean it. I wanted them to see it. I wanted them to see the mess and think they were winning. I went to the pantry and pulled out a bottle of red wine. Not a good one. A cheap cooking wine. I poured half of it down the sink, then splashed a little on my shirt. I gargled with it, letting the sour taste coat my tongue. I sat down in the living room chair facing the door. I placed the briefcase next to my feet. I rested my head back and waited. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the room. The house grew dark. I didn't turn on the lights. I sat in the gloom watching the dust motes settle. I was the spider in the center of the web, and the flies were coming home. I closed my eyes and pictured Beatrice's face. Not the face in the video twisted in pain, but the face I loved. The face that smiled at me over breakfast. The face that had looked at me with trust. I promise you, Bea, I whispered into the darkness. They won't keep a single dime. They won't keep the house. They won't even keep their names. By the time I am done with them, they will wish they had died in that room with you. Headlights swept across the front window. The sound of the BMW engine purred in the driveway. Car doors slammed. Laughter. They were laughing. They were probably celebrating the new deed they had just drafted. The key turned in the lock. The door opened. "Dad, we are home," Vanessa called out, her voice bright and fake. I didn't move. I let a small, confused smile touch my lips. "I am in here," I called back, my voice trembling just enough. "I am ready." The show was about to begin, and this time there would be no intermission. The front door swung open, bringing with it a gust of cold evening air and the scent of expensive perfume. Vanessa walked in first, her phone already pressed to her ear, complaining to someone about the incompetence of notary publics. Brandon followed, carrying a takeout bag from a sushi restaurant. They stopped dead when they saw me sitting in the armchair, the single floor lamp casting long shadows across my face. I had positioned the briefcase prominently by my feet. Dad, Brandon asked, his voice thick with irritation. "Why are you sitting in the dark? Did you break a light bulb or something?" I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch heavy and uncomfortable. I reached down and patted the leather briefcase. "I found it," I said softly. Vanessa ended her call. She squinted at me, stepping over the threshold. "Found what, Henry?" "If you found more old photos, we really aren't in the mood. We have had a hell of a day trying to fix your mess with the deed." "I found the money," I said. That stopped them. Brandon dropped the takeout bag on the hallway table. Vanessa took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "What money?" Brandon asked. I leaned forward, putting on my best performance of a confused, overwhelmed widower. I was looking through Beatrice's knitting bag, the one she kept under the bed. There was a false bottom. I found a passbook. It is for a high-yield savings account at a private bank in the Caymans. I paused for effect. There is $580,000 in it, I whispered. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I saw the calculation happening in real time behind their eyes. 500,000. That was 10 times Brandon's gambling debt. That was enough for Vanessa's renovation, her new car, and her entire influencer lifestyle for a year. "Let me see, Vanessa," said her voice suddenly breathless. She lunged forward, her hand outstretched. I pulled the briefcase back, clutching it to my chest like a frightened child. "No," I cried out. "You can't just take it. It is complicated. The account is frozen. It says right here in the note that it can only be released with the signature of the primary beneficiary and the executor of the estate." Executor Brandon said, his voice trembling with greed. "That is me. Mom made me the executor." "Exactly," I said, nodding eagerly. "But it also needs Richard Vane's counter-signature because the account was set up through his company's pension fund." I watched them exchange a look. It was a telepathic conversation of pure avarice. The anger about the coffee stain, the threat of the nursing home, the contempt, it all evaporated instantly. It was replaced by a hunger so raw, it was almost animalistic. Vanessa was the first to switch masks. Her face, which had been twisted in a sneer just seconds ago, softened into a grotesque parody of concern. She walked over and knelt beside my chair. She put her hand on my knee. Her touch made my skin crawl, but I didn't flinch. "Oh, Dad," she cooed. "This is wonderful news. Mom was looking out for us even from heaven. 500,000. Do you know what this means? We can get you the best care. We can fix up the house." Brandon came over too. He sat on the arm of the chair, putting his arm around my shoulders. The same shoulders he had planned to throw into a state facility. "This is great, Dad. Really great. So can we get the money tomorrow? I think so," I said, blinking rapidly. "But I am so tired, Brandon. And my back hurts. Looking for this all day. It really took it out of me. I don't know if I have the energy to go to the bank tomorrow. Maybe we should wait until next week." "No," they both shouted in unison. Brandon cleared his throat, trying to lower his volume. No, Dad. You shouldn't wait. Money like that, you need to secure it. We should handle it first thing in the morning. But I am so stiff I whined. And I am hungry. I haven't eaten since breakfast. I tried to make a sandwich, but my hands were shaking too much. Vanessa stood up. Her smile was tight, her eyes manic. "You must be starving. We have sushi. I can get you a roll." "I don't like raw fish, Vanessa. You know that. It upsets my stomach." "Well, what do you want?" she asked, the edge creeping back into her voice before she forced it down. I looked at her. I remembered the video of her drinking a smoothie while my wife died. I remembered her hatred for cooking, her hatred for anything that smelled or splattered. "I want liver and onions," I said. Vanessa gagged. Actually gagged. "What liver and onions?" I repeated firmly. "Beatrice used to make it for me when I was feeling weak, with the thick gravy and mashed potatoes. The real kind, Vanessa. Not the instant flakes. I need the iron. If I don't get my iron, I might get dizzy tomorrow. I might not be able to sign the papers." She looked at Brandon, pleading with her eyes. Brandon shrugged. $500,000, Ness, he mouthed. "Fine," Vanessa said through gritted teeth. "I will go to the store. I will make your damn liver." "Make sure you saute the onions slowly," I called after her as she grabbed her keys, "until they are caramelized. It takes about 45 minutes. When the door slammed behind her, I turned to Brandon. He was looking at his phone, probably checking the prices of sports cars. "Brandon," I said. "Yeah, Dad, my feet. They are killing me. It is the circulation. The doctor said I need to keep the blood moving or I could get a clot." "A clot?" Brandon looked alarmed. "We can't have you getting a clot before the bank opens. Exactly. I lifted my left foot and placed it on the ottoman. Could you rub them for me? Just for 20 minutes. Brandon stared at my foot. I was wearing old wool socks. I hadn't changed them in 2 days. Dad, surely you can. I groaned, clutching my chest. Oh, the stress. My heart is fluttering again. Maybe I should just go lie down. We can deal with the money next month. Brandon dropped to his knees so fast he almost hit his chin on the coffee table. No, don't get up. I will do it. Relax, just relax. He reached out and took my foot. I watched my son, the man who thought he was too good to work, the man who had called me a waste of space, begin to massage my aching arches. Harder, I instructed. You are barely touching me. Get your thumbs in there. He grimaced, but he pushed harder. I leaned back, closing my eyes. It wasn't about the massage. It was about the submission. It was about breaking the hierarchy he thought he had established. He thought he was the alpha male of this house. Now he was kneeling at my feet. Vanessa returned 40 minutes later. The house soon filled with the pungent metallic smell of frying liver. I could hear her in the kitchen cursing under her breath, slamming pans. She wasn't an influencer now. She was a servant. When she brought the plate out, she looked disheveled. There was grease on her silk blouse. Her hair was frizzy from the steam. Here, she said, slamming the plate down on the TV tray in front of me. Liver and onions. Happy it looks a little dry, I criticized, poking the meat with my fork. But I suppose it will do. Thank you, Vanessa. You are a good girl. She looked like she wanted to scream, but she forced a smile that looked more like a rictus of pain. Anything for you, Henry? I ate slowly. Every bite was a victory. I made them watch me eat. I made Brandon fetch me a glass of water, then send it back because it wasn't cold enough. I made Vanessa fluff my pillow. I ran them ragged for 2 hours, playing the demanding invalid, dangling the promise of the fortune like a carrot on a stick. Finally, when I had finished the last bite and wiped my mouth with the napkin Brandon was holding for me, I sat back. That was delicious, I lied. It was rubbery and overcooked. Now about tomorrow. They both leaned in like dogs waiting for a treat. I called Richard while you were at the store. Vanessa, he is going to meet us at his office at 10 a.m. He said he has the paperwork ready to unfreeze the assets. He asked that Gavin be there too to handle the legal transfer to Brandon. Perfect, Brandon said, cracking his knuckles. I will text Gavin right now. 10 a.m. We will be there. And Henry? Vanessa asked, her voice trembling. The check. Can we get a certified check tomorrow? I smiled. A genuine smile. Because I knew exactly what they were going to get tomorrow. Richard said everything will be settled tomorrow, I assured her. Every single penny will go exactly where it deserves to go. Vanessa clapped her hands together. Oh, thank God. Finally, we can finally start living. She didn't know how right she was. They were about to start living a nightmare. I think I will go to bed now, I said, standing up. I feel much stronger. Thank you for taking such good care of me. It is nice to know I have family I can count on. We love you, Dad, Brandon said. The lie slipped out of his mouth as easily as the grease from the liver. I love you too, son, I said. And I meant it. I loved him enough to stop him. I loved him enough to make sure he couldn't hurt anyone else ever again. I climbed the stairs, listening to them high-five each other in the living room. They were celebrating their lottery win. They were toasting to their cleverness, to their patience, to the stupid old man upstairs who had just handed them the keys to the kingdom. I walked into the bedroom and locked the door. I checked the camera one last time. It was recording. Sleep well, children, I whispered to the empty room. Tomorrow, school is in session. The sun had barely risen when the transformation began. The house, which for days had felt like a funeral parlor, suddenly vibrated with a manic energy. I sat in the kitchen nursing a cup of black coffee, watching my son pace back and forth. He was wearing his best suit, the navy one I had bought him for his first job interview 5 years ago. He kept smoothing the lapels, checking his reflection in the microwave door. Vanessa was upstairs, the sound of her blow-dryer whining like a jet engine. They weren't grieving children preparing for a legal meeting. They were predators preparing for a feast. At 8:15, Brandon's phone rang. He lunged for it, nearly knocking over the sugar bowl. He put it on speakerphone, a habit born of arrogance, assuming he had nothing to hide. "Mr. Caldwell." The voice on the other end was tight, strained. It was Gavin Mercer. I took a slow sip of my coffee to hide the small smile playing on my lips. I knew exactly why Gavin sounded like he was being strangled. He was likely staring at the barrel of Richard's gun, or the grim face of an FBI agent, while he read the script we had prepared for him. "Yes, Gavin, I am here," Brandon said, his voice dropping an octave to sound important. "Is everything set for the transfer?" "Yes," Gavin replied. His pause was a fraction of a second too long, but Brandon was too blinded by greed to notice. "I have spoken with the bank administrators and Mr. Vane. The supplementary codicil regarding the offshore savings has been verified. The funds are available. We just need to execute the final signatures at 10 o'clock. Brandon pumped his fist in the air silently. Verified. The magic word. "That is excellent news," Gavin Brandon said. "And the amount, just to be clear for my records, $582,000, Gavin recited. I saw Brandon's knees actually buckle. He grabbed the counter for support. A flush of red crept up his neck. "Understood," he managed to say. "We will be there." He hung up and let out a whoop that shook the light fixtures. Ness, get down here. It is real." Vanessa came thundering down the stairs. She was wearing a white dress that looked more appropriate for a yacht party than a lawyer's office. She had gold earrings the size of saucers. "Is it confirmed?" she shrieked, grabbing Brandon's shoulders. Verified. Brandon grinned, his eyes wild. 580 grand, baby. It is sitting there waiting for us." They hugged, jumping up and down in the middle of the kitchen, where my wife used to bake bread. I sat there invisible, a piece of furniture they had momentarily decided not to throw out. "Dad." "Did you hear?" Brandon turned to me, beaming. "It is all happening." "I heard," I said, keeping my voice tremulous. That is a lot of money, son. Please be careful with it. Beatrice worked very hard for that." "Oh, don't worry, Henry," Vanessa said, dismissing me with a wave of her manicured hand. "We know exactly how to handle high finances. You just worry about your blood pressure." Then the madness truly began. Most people would wait until the check cleared. Most people would wait until the money was safely in their account. But my son and his wife were not most people. They were addicts, and the promise of money was just as potent as the money itself. "We have 2 hours before the meeting," Vanessa said, checking her watch. "That is enough time. Enough time for what I asked. To upgrade our arrival," she declared. "We can't pull up to Vane Tower in that leased sedan. We are entering a new tax bracket, Brandon. We need to look the part. If you want to be treated like a millionaire, you have to dress the part." "But we don't have the cash yet," I ventured, playing the role of the cautious, annoying old man. Brandon scoffed. "Dad, it is called leverage. I have credit cards. I have the line of credit. I can max them out this morning and pay them off by lunch. It is how business works. You have to spend money to make money." He didn't know the first thing about business. He only knew about consumption. They left me alone in the house for 90 minutes. They didn't invite me. They told me to be ready by 9:45. I used that time to call Richard. "They are spending money they don't have," I told him. "Good," Richard said. His voice was grim. "The more debt they acquire this morning, the harder they fall. Gavin is ready. The FBI is set up in the conference room next door. We are going to let them sign the papers, Henry. We are going to let them think they have it. And then we are going to play the video. I hung up and waited. I walked around the living room touching the things they planned to throw away. The old clock. The velvet curtains. I said a silent goodbye to the house. It wasn't my home anymore. It was a crime scene. At 9:30 I heard the rumble of an engine. It wasn't the whine of their sedan. It was a deep, throaty roar. I looked out the window. Pulling into the driveway was a brand new silver Porsche 911. It still had the dealer stickers in the window. Brandon was behind the wheel wearing sunglasses. Vanessa was in the passenger seat laughing, her head thrown back. I walked out to the porch. Brandon got out of the car, slamming the door with a satisfying thud. He patted the hood like it was a loyal dog. "What do you think, Dad?" he asked, spinning the keys on his finger. "Zero down, high-interest, short-term loan. The dealer practically begged me to take it when I showed him the email from Gavin." "It is very fast," I said. "It is a beast," he corrected me. "And look at this." Vanessa stepped out. She was holding several shopping bags. Saks Fifth Avenue, Neiman Marcus. She had changed her shoes. She was now wearing red-soled heels that I knew cost more than my first mortgage payment. "A little treat for the new matriarch of the family," she said, striking a pose. "And we got you something too, Henry." She tossed a small bag at me. I caught it. Inside was a tie. A cheap polyester tie in a garish shade of yellow. "For the meeting," she said. "You need to brighten up. You look like a undertaker." I held the cheap tie in my hand. They had spent thousands on themselves, leveraged against money that didn't exist, and bought me a $10 tie. It was perfect. It was the final insult I needed to steal my heart. "We should go," Brandon said, checking his new watch, another purchase, I assumed. "We don't want to keep the money waiting." I climbed into the back seat of the Porsche. It was small, cramped. I had to fold my legs awkwardly. Brandon revved the engine, peeling out of the driveway, leaving tire marks on the pavement. As we drove toward the city, they talked over each other, their voices high with adrenaline. "We should book that trip to the Maldives," Vanessa said. "First class." "I am done with Coach, and I am going to quit the firm on Monday," Brandon added. "I am going to start my own consultancy. With this capital, I can finally be my own boss. No more answering to idiots." I sat in the back, silent. I clutched my briefcase tight against my chest. Inside was the iPad. Inside was the truth. They were talking about the future. I was thinking about the past. I was thinking about the day Brandon was born. I remembered holding him, promising to protect him. And in a twisted way, that is exactly what I was doing. I was protecting him from becoming a monster. But the only way to kill the monster was to let it starve. We pulled up to Vane Tower. The glass building pierced the sky, gleaming in the morning light. "Here we go," Brandon said, turning off the engine. "The first day of the rest of our lives." He was right. But he had no idea just how short that life was going to be. We walked into the lobby. The security guard nodded at me. He knew who I was. He knew Beatrice. I saw a flicker of sadness in his eyes, but he remained professional. Brandon marched past him like he owned the building. "Penthouse," Brandon told the receptionist. "We are expected." We rode the elevator up. The silence in the metal box was thick. Brandon was tapping his foot. Vanessa was checking her makeup in the mirrored wall. I stood in the corner, the ghost in the machine. When the doors opened, the hallway was quiet. Too quiet. Usually there were phones ringing, assistants bustling. Today it was empty. "Just down the hall," Brandon said, leading the way. We reached the double doors of the conference room. Brandon reached for the handle. He paused for a second, a moment of hesitation. "You ready, Dad?" he asked. I looked at him. I looked at the son who had bought a Porsche while his mother's grave was still fresh. I am ready, I said. He pushed the doors open. Gavin was sitting at the head of the long table. He looked pale, sweating profusely. A stack of documents sat in front of him. Richard Vane stood by the window, his back to us, looking out at the city. "Welcome, Richard," said, turning around. His face was unreadable. "I see you arrived in style. We decided to celebrate." "Early," Vanessa said, dropping her shopping bags on a chair. "I hope you don't mind." "Not at all," Richard said. "Please, sit down." They sat. They didn't notice that the door behind them had clicked shut. They didn't notice that there were no glasses of water on the table. They only saw the papers. "Let's get started," Brandon said, pulling out his fountain pen. "Where do I sign?" Richard looked at me. I nodded. "Actually," Richard said, pressing a button on a remote control in his hand. "Before we sign the transfer, there is a small presentation Henry wanted you to see. It is a mandatory part of the verification process." A presentation. Brandon frowned. "Is this going to take long? The bank closes at 3. "It won't take long." I spoke up, my voice suddenly strong, clear, and devoid of the tremble I had faked for days. I walked over to the wall where the projection screen was descending. "It takes exactly 3 minutes," I said. Brandon and Vanessa turned to look at me. For the first time, they saw me. Really saw me. They saw that I wasn't shaking. They saw that I wasn't confused. They saw the cold, hard anger of a father who had been pushed too far. Dad, Brandon whispered. "Watch the screen," I commanded. The lights dimmed. The projector hummed to life. And the image of our bedroom appeared. The elevator ride to the 45th floor was the longest ascent of my life, while the digital numbers on the display ticked upward, counting down the seconds to their destruction. Brandon and Vanessa were vibrating with an energy that was almost radioactive. They were high on the fumes of a fortune they had not earned and would never touch. Vanessa adjusted her oversized sunglasses, checking her reflection in the polished brass doors. She smoothed the fabric of her white dress, a garment that cost more than Beatrice and I used to spend on groceries in 6 months. She looked like a woman who had already won the lottery, oblivious to the fact that she was holding a losing ticket. When the doors slid open with a soft chime, we stepped into the reception area of Vane Enterprises. It was a space designed to intimidate all glass, chrome, and silence. A young woman sat behind a curved marble desk. She was typing quietly, her demeanor professional and unassuming. This was Sarah, Richard's executive assistant for 10 years. Beatrice had mentored her. I knew Sarah. I knew she had a 2-year-old daughter, and that she was one of the kindest souls in this building. But to Vanessa, she was just an obstacle. Vanessa marched up to the desk, her heels clicking aggressively on the marble. She didn't say hello. She didn't introduce herself. She simply tapped her manicured nails on the stone surface, demanding attention. "We are here for the meeting with Mr. Vane," Vanessa announced, her voice echoing in the quiet room. "And I would like a coffee. Espresso. Double shot. And make sure it is hot this time. The last time I was in a place like this, the girl brought me lukewarm sludge." Sarah looked up, blinking behind her glasses. She recognized me immediately. I saw her eyes widen slightly, a flash of recognition and sorrow, but she caught my subtle shake of the head. She composed herself, turning her gaze to Vanessa. "Mr. Vane is expecting you in conference room B," Sarah said politely. "I can certainly get you some water, ma'am, but our barista is currently on break." Vanessa let out a scoff that was pure, unfiltered arrogance. She leaned over the desk, invading Sarah's personal space. "The barista is on break, honey. Do you know who we are? We are retrieving over $500,000 today. We are Vane Enterprises' most important clients of the morning. I don't care if you have to brew it yourself or run down to the street. Get me my coffee, and get one for my husband. He needs to be sharp to count all that money." Brandon chuckled, stepping up beside her. "Yeah, chop chop, sweetheart. We don't have all day." I stood back watching this display of entitlement. It was the final confirmation. If I had held any lingering doubt, any shred of fatherly guilt about what was going to happen in the next 10 minutes, it evaporated right there. They treated people like furniture. They treated kindness like weakness. They were rot, and rot had to be excised. Sarah looked at me again. I gave her a small, sad smile. "I will see what I can do," Sarah said quietly. "Please go right in." Vanessa flipped her hair, turning away without a thank you. "Come on, Henry," she snapped at me. "Try to keep up. Don't drag your feet. We need you to look alive for at least another hour." We walked down the long corridor lined with abstract art. The walls were glass, offering a panoramic view of Chicago. The city looked small from up here, insignificant. That was how they felt about everyone else. Small. We reached the double doors of Conference Room B. They were made of frosted glass, opaque and imposing. Brandon reached out and pushed them open. The room was freezing. That was the first thing I noticed. The air conditioning was cranked down low, chilling the sweat on my skin. In the center of the room was a long table made of dark walnut wood. At the far end sat Gavin Mercer. My lawyer looked like a man who was waiting for the executioner. He was pale, his skin having a gray, clammy sheen. He was sweating despite the cold. He had a stack of files in front of him, but his hands were gripping the edge of the table so tightly his knuckles were white. He didn't look up when we entered. He just stared at the wood grain trembling slightly. Richard Vane was standing by the window, his back to us. He was looking out at the skyline, his posture rigid. Mr. Vane, Brandon called out, striding into the room with his hand extended. "Good to see you again. Thank you for setting this up so quickly." Richard turned slowly. He didn't take Brandon's hand. He didn't smile. His face was a mask of stone. "Sit down," Richard said. His voice was low, devoid of the warmth he usually showed. Brandon faltered for a second, his hand left hanging in the air. He pulled it back, wiping it on his pants. "Right. Down to business. I like that." They sat on one side of the table. Vanessa threw her shopping bags onto an empty chair, the logos of luxury brands facing outward, as if to announce their status. I sat opposite them next to Gavin. I placed my briefcase on the table. So Vanessa began, unable to contain herself. "Where is it? Is it a wire transfer or a cashier's check?" "We prefer a wire, obviously. It is faster." Richard walked over to the head of the table. He pressed a button on the console built into the wood. Behind us, the heavy glass doors clicked. It was a mechanical final sound. The electronic locks engaging. Brandon turned around, startled. "Why did the doors lock? Security protocol," Richard said smoothly. "When we deal with high-value asset transfers, we seal the room. No interruptions." "Oh," Vanessa said, relaxing instantly. "Very James Bond. I like it. It makes me feel rich already." She turned back to Gavin. "Okay, Gavin. Let's see the paperwork. Hand it over." Gavin didn't move. He didn't speak. He just kept staring at the table, a bead of sweat rolling down his temple. Gavin, Brandon asked, leaning forward. "Are you okay? You look like you are going to be sick." "Gavin is fine," I said. My voice cut through the room. It wasn't the voice of the confused old man anymore. It was clear. Steady. Brandon and Vanessa both turned to look at me. They frowned, sensing a shift in the atmosphere, but unable to place it. Dad, Brandon asked, "Why do you sound like that?" I reached into my pocket and pulled out the earpiece Richard had given me. I placed it on the table. Then I pulled out the bottle of placebo pills and set it next to the earpiece. "Sound like what, Brandon?" I asked, meeting his gaze. "Like a man who knows exactly what you did." Vanessa laughed, but it was a nervous, brittle sound. "What are you talking about?" "Henry. Stop being weird." "Gavin, give us the papers." We have a lunch reservation at noon. There are no papers, Gavin whispered. His voice was so quiet, it was barely audible. What Vanessa snapped. Speak up. There is no money. Gavin said louder, finally looking up. His eyes were red, terrified. There is no offshore account. There is no $500,000. It was a lie. The room went dead silent. You could hear the hum of the ventilation system. A lie. Brandon stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. What kind of sick joke is this? We bought a car. We spent $20,000 this morning. What do you mean there is no money? Sit down, Brandon, Richard commanded. His voice boomed across the room. Who do you think you are talking to? Vanessa screamed, standing up to join her husband. This is entrapment. This is fraud. I am going to sue you. I am going to sue this entire company. Come on, Brandon. We are leaving. Grab your father. We are putting him in that home tonight. She turned to the door. She marched over and grabbed the handle. She pulled. It didn't budge. She pulled again, rattling the glass. Open this door, she shrieked. I told you, Richard said calmly. Security protocol. No one leaves until the transaction is complete. But there is no transaction, Brandon yelled, his face turning a blotchy red. You just said there is no money. Oh, there is a transaction, I said. I opened my briefcase. I took out the iPad. I walked over to the console where Richard was standing. We are not here to transfer money, I said, plugging the iPad into the system. We are here to transfer responsibility. I looked at my son. He looked confused, angry, and scared. He looked like a child who had been caught stealing, but he still didn't understand the magnitude of his crime. You wanted to know about Beatrice's legacy, I said. You wanted to know what she left behind. She left the truth. I pressed the button on the console. The blinds on the windows automatically lowered, plunging the room into a gray twilight. A large projection screen descended from the ceiling at the far end of the room. What is this? Vanessa whispered, backing away from the locked door. What are you doing? I am showing you the cost of your greed, I said. The screen flickered to life. The date stamp appeared in the corner. December 20th, 2:14 p.m. The image of our bedroom filled the wall. The image of Beatrice alive, reading her book. The color drained from Vanessa's face so fast, she looked like a corpse. She put her hand over her mouth. No, she breathed. Yes, I said. And then the video began to play. The first image that flickered onto the massive screen was not a bank statement or a routing number. It was the interior of my kitchen from exactly 24 hours ago. The angle was high and wide, capturing the entire room in brutal clarity. On the screen, I saw myself spilling the coffee. I saw the brown liquid spreading across the table. But more importantly, I saw Vanessa's face. The camera captured the twist of her lip, the sheer, unadulterated hatred in her eyes as she screamed at me. The audio filled the conference room, amplified by the surround sound speakers. Vanessa's recorded voice was shrill and piercing. You are a danger to yourself. I am making the call. You will spend the rest of your life staring at a beige wall. In the conference room, the real Vanessa gasped. She took a step back, her hands flying to her mouth. She looked from the screen to me, her eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and dawning horror. That is illegal, she stammered, her voice trembling. You recorded us. You can't do that. That is an invasion of privacy. I didn't say a word. I just pointed at the screen. The scene changed. The date stamp in the corner read December 20th. The time was 2:14 in the afternoon. The setting was the master bedroom. The room went deathly still. Brandon, who had been staring at the floor, slowly lifted his head. He recognized the date. He recognized the room. On the screen, Beatrice was lying in bed. She looked frail but peaceful. Then the spasm hit her. The speakers played the sound of her gasping for air, a wet, desperate sound that made my own lungs constrict. Then the door opened. On screen, Vanessa walked in. She was wearing her green workout gear. She was holding her smoothie. "No," Vanessa whispered in the conference room. "Turn it off. Richard, turn it off right now." She lunged toward the console, her fingernails clawing at the air, but Richard stepped in front of her. He didn't touch her. He just stood there, a wall of granite in a tailored suit. "Sit down, Mrs. Caldwell," Richard rumbled. "Watch." We watched. We watched Vanessa stand at the foot of the bed. We watched her sip her drink, while my wife, a woman who had welcomed her into our family, begged for her life. "Help," the recorded Beatrice wheezed. "Pills." The silence in the conference room was so heavy, it felt like it was crushing my chest. I looked at Brandon. His face was a mask of shock. He was staring at the screen, his mouth slightly open. He knew his wife was cold. He knew she was greedy. But seeing her casually murder his mother, that was a reality his weak mind was struggling to process. On the screen, Vanessa picked up the orange bottle. She shook it. The sound of the pills rattling was like a gunshot. Then she placed it on the high shelf. "You should have just signed the power of attorney," the Vanessa on the screen said. In the room, the real Vanessa let out a sound that wasn't human. It was a high-pitched keen like a trapped animal. "It is fake," she screamed, spinning around to face us. Her face was blotchy, her eyes wild. "It is AI. You generated this. You are trying to frame me." "I never did that. I tried to help her." I stood up slowly. I walked over to where she was standing, trembling and lying. "You wiped the bottle, Vanessa," I said softly. My voice was calm, which seemed to terrify her more than if I had screamed. "You wiped your fingerprints off with your shirt." "Do you want me to fast forward to that part? Or maybe the part where you practiced your surprised face in the mirror before calling 911? She backed away from me until she hit the locked glass doors. She was shaking her head violently, tears of panic streaming down her face. "Brandon," she shrieked, "do something. He is lying. Tell them he is lying." Brandon didn't move. He couldn't take his eyes off the screen where the image of his dead mother was frozen in her final moment of agony. "You killed her," Brandon whispered. Vanessa froze. She looked at her husband. "We did this for us," she hissed, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper. "You said you wanted the money, Brandon. You said you wished she would just go. You said it—" "I didn't say kill her," Brandon roared, finally standing up. He knocked his chair over. "I said I needed money. I didn't say watch her die." "You knew," she screamed back, pointing a shaking finger at him. "You knew I was going over there. You knew I hated her. Don't you dare play the innocent victim now. You spent the money before we even had it." I watched them turn on each other. It was inevitable. Rats always eat each other when the ship starts to sink. "There is no money, is there?" Vanessa asked, turning back to me. Her eyes were darting around the room, looking for an exit, looking for a weapon, looking for anything. "There never was," I said. "There is no offshore account. There is no $500,000. The only thing in that briefcase is the evidence of your crimes. You tricked us," she spat. "You lured us here." "I gave you a choice," I corrected her. "I gave you a chance to be decent. I asked you to clean up a coffee stain. I asked you to show kindness. You chose the nursing home. You chose greed." I looked at the screen one last time at Beatrice's face. "You wanted the house, Vanessa. You wanted the lifestyle. Well, you are going to get free housing for the rest of your life. But I don't think you will like the roommates." Vanessa threw herself at the glass doors. She pounded on them with her fists, screaming for help. "Let me out! Help! I am being held against my will!" She grabbed a heavy crystal vase from the sideboard and raised it, intending to smash the glass. "That is enough," Richard said. He pressed another button on the console. The frosted glass of the conference room doors cleared instantly, becoming transparent. Standing on the other side were not secretaries. Standing there with their badges visible and their hands resting on their holsters were 4 federal agents. Vanessa dropped the vase. It shattered on the floor, sending crystal shards skittering across the carpet. She stood amidst the wreckage of the vase and the wreckage of her life, her chest heaving, her mouth opening and closing, but making no sound. The trap had snapped shut. The bait had been taken. And now the skinning was about to begin. The sound of the crystal vase shattering on the floor was the last noise Vanessa made before the silence of the law took over. The glass wall that had separated our private family tragedy from the outside world had vanished, leaving my son and his wife exposed like specimens in a laboratory. Standing on the other side were 4 individuals wearing FBI windbreakers. They did not look like the friendly neighborhood police officers. They looked like the end of the line. The lead agent, a tall man with a face carved from granite, stepped through the open doorway. He didn't shout. He didn't run. He walked with the terrifying calmness of a man who knows there is no escape. The room seemed to shrink. The luxury, the view of the skyline, the expensive furniture, it all became irrelevant. The only thing that mattered now was the metal badge on his belt and the warrants in his hand. "Federal agents," he announced. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. "Nobody move. Keep your hands where we can see them." Vanessa was the first to break. She didn't freeze. She unraveled. She scrambled backward, her high heels slipping on the shards of the vase she had just broken. She looked at Richard, then at me, her eyes bulging with a manic desperation. "This is a mistake," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "He is senile. He doctored those videos. You can't come in here without a warrant. I know my rights. I have 1 million followers. You can't touch me." The agent didn't even blink. He signaled to the female agent behind him. She moved with efficient speed, closing the distance to Vanessa in 2 strides. She spun Vanessa around, grabbing her wrist with a practiced grip. "Vanessa Caldwell," the lead agent read from a paper in his hand, "you are under arrest." "For what?" Vanessa screamed, thrashing, as the cold steel of the handcuffs clicked around her wrists. "I didn't do anything. I am a victim here." The agent looked at her, and then he began to read the list. It wasn't just a list of crimes. It was a eulogy for her life. "You are being charged with conspiracy to commit wire fraud. You are being charged with attempted grand larceny involving the assets of Henry Caldwell. You are being charged with violation of the Federal Elder Justice Act for the attempted coerced institutionalization of a senior citizen." Vanessa was sobbing now. Great heaving gasps of air. "But I didn't buy the dress," she wailed. "I didn't sign the loans. That was Brandon." The agent wasn't finished. He took a step closer to her. "And based on video evidence secured this morning, you are being charged with negligent homicide and depraved heart murder in the 2nd degree regarding the death of Beatrice Caldwell." The words hung in the air like smoke. Murder. It wasn't just neglect anymore. It was official. It was federal. Brandon, who had been paralyzed in his chair, suddenly lunged forward. He didn't lunge at the agents. He lunged at me. He fell to his knees, crawling across the carpet, ignoring the agents who were moving to intercept him. "Dad!" He cried out, tears streaming down his face. "Dad, please, you have to tell them I didn't know. I swear to God. Dad, I didn't know she withheld the pills. I just wanted the money. I didn't want Mom to die." I looked down at my son. He was clutching the leg of my trousers, the expensive fabric bunching in his fist. He looked pathetic. He looked like the little boy who used to hide behind my legs when it stormed. But that little boy was gone. This was a man who had stood by and let his wife call his father a waste of space. "Get up, Brandon," I said. My voice was quiet, but it cut through his sobbing. "Dad, tell them I am innocent." "You are not innocent, son," I said, looking him in the eye. "You are just as guilty. You watched her die on the replay, and you worried about yourself. You drove a car bought with stolen credit to a meeting to steal my house. You are not a victim. You are an accomplice. Two agents hauled Brandon to his feet. He didn't fight them. He went limp, his body sagging as the reality of his future crashed down on him. The Porsche, the consulting firm, the Maldives, it all dissolved, replaced by a 6x8 concrete cell. And Mr. Mercer, the lead agent, said, turning his attention to Gavin. Gavin was still sitting at the table. He hadn't moved. He had placed his hands flat on the wood, palms down. He knew the game was over. He was a lawyer. He knew exactly how much jail time was in this room. I will cooperate. Gavin whispered, his voice trembling. I have files. I have emails. Vanessa forced me. She threatened to expose my... Save it for the judge, Mr. Mercer, the agent said, nodding to his partner. They cuffed Gavin. The three of them, the unholy trinity that had tried to dismantle my life, were now lined up against the wall. Vanessa was still screaming about her followers. Brandon was weeping, staring at the floor. Gavin was hyperventilating. Richard Vane walked over to me. He put a hand on my shoulder. It is done, Henry, he said softly. I looked at them one last time. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. It wasn't joy. It wasn't happiness. It was the feeling of a heavy weight being lifted, leaving a sore, empty space behind. Officer, I said to the lead agent. Yes, Mr. Caldwell, make sure they get a call, I said. But tell them they can't call me. I have a garden to tend to. The agents began to march them out. As they passed me, Vanessa lunged one last time, spitting in my direction. You are going to hell, Henry, she screamed. You are going to die alone. I wiped a speck of spittle from my lapel. I watched the elevator doors close on her twisted, hateful face. I might die alone, Vanessa, I whispered to the empty room. But I will sleep with a clean conscience. And tonight, for the first time in a week, I will sleep in my own house, in my own bed, without wondering if the person next to me is counting the minutes until I stop breathing. The room was quiet again. The projection screen was still down, frozen on the last frame of the video. Beatrice's empty bed. I turned to Richard. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me, Richard replied, picking up the remote and turning off the screen. Thank Beatrice. She was the one who caught them. We just took out the trash. We walked out of the conference room, leaving the shattered vase and the ghosts of my family behind. The air in the hallway felt lighter, cleaner. The storm was over. Now I just had to learn how to live in the quiet that followed. The silence that descended on the conference room after the elevator doors closed on Vanessa was heavy and suffocating. It was the silence of a tomb. Brandon stood alone in the center of the room, flanked by two federal agents. His shoulders, usually squared with arrogance, were slumped. He looked smaller, like a suit that had been deflated. He stared at the floor, his eyes darting back and forth, as if searching for a trap door that would swallow him whole and spit him out in a world where he hadn't destroyed his own life. He slowly lifted his head and looked at me. His eyes were red-rimmed with tears that I knew were not for his mother or for me, but for himself. He took a stumbling step forward, but the agent's hand clamped down on his shoulder, holding him in place. Dad, Brandon choked out, his voice cracking. Please, you can't let them take me. I am your son. I am the only family you have left. I looked at him. I looked for the boy I used to take fishing. I looked for the teenager I taught to drive. But those people were gone. Standing before me was a stranger who shared my DNA, but none of my soul. You are not my family. Brandon, I said, my voice steady and cold. Family protects each other. Family does not plot to put their father in a warehouse to die. Family does not watch their mother gasp for air and do nothing. I didn't know she was going to die, Brandon wailed, dropping to his knees. The agents let him fall. He looked pathetic, kneeling on the expensive carpet and nigging for a salvation he didn't deserve. Vanessa manipulated me. She controlled everything. I was just weak, Dad. I am sorry for being weak. Please tell them it was a mistake. Tell them I am a good person. I walked over to him. I stood over him, looking down at the top of his head. Being weak is not a crime, Brandon, I said softly. But greed is. Betrayal is. You had a choice every single day. You could have called me. You could have told me about the debt. We would have figured it out. I would have sold the house to help you if you had just asked me with honesty. But you didn't want help. You wanted a shortcut. You wanted to skip the hard work and go straight to the reward. I am sorry, he sobbed, reaching out to grab my hand. I pulled it away before he could touch me. Don't, I said. Do not touch me. He recoiled as if I had burned him. What am I going to do? He whispered, staring at his cuffed hands. I have nothing. She spent all the money. I have massive debt. I have no home. I have nothing. I looked at Richard, who was watching from the window. He gave me a slow nod. It was time to end this. You are wrong, Brandon, I said. You are not leaving here with nothing. You came here today for an inheritance, didn't you? You came here expecting me to hand over everything Beatrice and I built for 40 years. Brandon looked up, a tiny, desperate flicker of hope in his eyes. Well, I am going to give it to you, I said. Dad, he breathed. I leaned in close so only he could hear the finality in my voice. The only asset I am leaving you is a lesson in personal responsibility. It is the one thing I failed to teach you, and the one thing you desperately need. It is a harsh lesson, and the tuition is expensive. You are going to pay for it with your freedom. The hope in his eyes died, replaced by a cold, gray horror. Good luck in prison, son, I said, standing up and turning my back on him. Study hard. You have a long time to learn. Dad, no, Dad. Please, his screams followed me as I walked toward the door. Take him away, the agent ordered. I heard the scuffle of feet, the sound of a struggle, and then the heavy thud of the service elevator opening. I didn't look back. I walked out of the conference room and into the hallway. I felt a tear roll down my cheek, but I didn't wipe it away. I let it fall. It was the last tear I would ever shed for Brandon Caldwell. He was gone. And I was finally free. The week after the arrest was the quietest week of my life. The house that Brandon and Vanessa had been so desperate to steal was finally legally mine. But as I walked through the empty hallways listening to the floorboards creak under my feet, I realized something important. A house is just wood and brick. A home is made of people. And without Beatrice and with the memory of my son's betrayal stained into the very walls, this place was no longer a home. It was a mausoleum. I didn't waste time. I didn't spend months agonizing over the decision. I called a real estate agent on Monday morning. She was a nice woman, professional, the kind of person who drives a practical sedan and answers her phone on the first ring. When she walked in, she started talking about staging the furniture and waiting for the spring market to maximize the value. She talked about curb appeal and bidding wars. I stopped her in the middle of the living room. I told her I didn't care about the market. I didn't care about the highest bid. I wanted it gone. I wanted to hand over the keys and never look back. I told her to list it for a price that would make it sell in 24 hours. She looked at me like I was crazy. She told me I was leaving $200,000 on the table. I told her that peace of mind was worth more than money. We sold it 3 days later to a young couple. They were expecting their first child. I saw the way the husband looked at his wife with genuine protection and love, not the predatory hunger I had seen in Brandon's eyes. When I handed them the keys, I felt a physical weight lift off my chest. I left the furniture, I left the curtains. I took only my clothes, my tools, and the box of Beatrice's journals. The check for the sale was substantial. Combined with the insurance payout and the savings Richard had helped me recover, I was technically a wealthy man. I stared at the bank balance on my phone screen. It was just a number. To Brandon and Vanessa, that number was a god. It was the reason they had thrown away their souls. To me, it was blood money. It felt dirty. I couldn't spend it on a vacation. I couldn't buy a new car with the money that had essentially cost my wife her life. So I went back to Vane Tower. I sat in Richard's office, the same office where we had sprung the trap. The projection screen was up. The room was bright. "I want to give it away," I told Richard. He didn't try to talk me out of it. He didn't tell me to invest in stocks or buy a condo in Florida. He just nodded because he understood. We set up the trust that afternoon. We called it the Beatrice Caldwell Foundation. But I didn't want it to be just another charity that throws gala dinners and pats itself on the back. I wanted it to be a weapon. I wanted it to be a shield for people like Mipu. We designed the mission statement together. The foundation would provide free, high-quality legal aid to elderly people facing financial abuse from their families. It would pay for private investigators to uncover fraud. It would pay for emergency housing for seniors who had been kicked out by their own children. It would be the protector that I wish I had from the beginning. Signing the transfer documents was the most satisfying moment of the entire ordeal. I watched the millions of dollars drain from my account and flow into the foundation. I wasn't losing money. I was buying justice. I was making sure that what happened to Beatrice would not happen to anyone else, not if I could help it. Richard looked at the signed papers and then at me. "You know, Henry," he said, "Beatrice would be proud. She was always the one who wanted to save the world. You are finally finishing her work." I didn't cry. I had no tears left. I just felt a fierce, burning purpose. I hired Sarah, the receptionist Vanessa had insulted, to run the daily operations. I paid her double what she was making at the front desk. She had cried when I offered her the job. She told me she had been saving for a house for her daughter. I told her that good people deserve good things. I kept enough for myself to live simply. I rented a small cottage near the lake. It has one bedroom and a porch where I can watch the sun rise. It is small. It is quiet. But it is clean. There are no cameras hidden in the walls. There are no secrets. The last thing I did before leaving the city was to stop by the courthouse. I filed the paperwork to ensure that the foundation would run in perpetuity. Even after I am gone, the money will keep fighting. The house that greed built was gone. In its place, I had built a fortress of justice. And every time the foundation wins a case, every time we stop a greedy child from stealing a parent's dignity, it will be like Beatrice sending a little message from the other side. A message that says you can steal the money, but you can never steal the truth. 6 months later, I stood in a room that smelled of bleach and despair. It was the visitation center of the state correctional facility. I was not there because I missed my son. I was there because I needed to close the final door. When Brandon walked in, he was wearing an orange jumpsuit that hung loosely on his frame. He had lost weight. His hair, usually styled with expensive gel, was shaved close to his scalp. He sat down on the other side of the thick plexiglass and picked up the phone. I picked up mine. "Dad," Brandon said, his voice crackling through the receiver. "You came. I knew you would come." He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask about the foundation. He leaned in close to the glass, his eyes darting around nervously. "Dad, you have to get me a better lawyer," he whispered. "The public defender is useless. Vanessa is trying to pin everything on me. She says I masterminded the whole thing. You have money now, right? I saw the news about the house sale. You can hire the best defense team in the city. You can get me out on an appeal." I looked at him. Even in prison, even after everything, he still saw me as a wallet. He didn't see a father. He saw a resource to be exploited. I am not here to hire a lawyer, Brandon, I said calmly. I am here to say goodbye. Goodbye. Panic flared in his eyes. What do you mean? You can't leave me here. It is hell in here, Dad. The food is inedible. The other inmates, they scare me. I don't belong here. You belong exactly where you are, I told him. You are right where your choices led you. But I am your son, he shouted, hitting the glass with his fist. A guard stepped forward, but Brandon waved him off. Dad, please. Just $5,000 for the commissary, for protection. I am begging you. I slowly reached into my pocket. Brandon's eyes lit up. He thought I was pulling out a checkbook. Instead, I pulled out a photo. It was a picture of Beatrice, not the one from the funeral, but a candid one I took years ago where she was laughing in the garden, her hands covered in soil. I pressed it against the glass. Do you remember her? I asked. Brandon blinked, looking at the photo. Mom, she is the reason I am not helping you, I said. Every time I think about writing a check, I think about her gasping for air while you checked your sports betting app. Every time I feel a pang of guilt, I remember that you planned to put me in a place far worse than this just so you could buy a Porsche. I put the photo back in my pocket. I donated the money, Brandon. All of it. The house money, the insurance, the savings. It is all gone. It is helping people who actually deserve it. You did what, he whispered, his face going pale. You gave away my inheritance. It was never yours, I said, standing up. It was ours, and now it belongs to the world. I hung up the phone. Brandon started screaming. He was slamming the receiver against the metal box, yelling that I was crazy, that I was cruel, that I owed him. I didn't hear a word. The glass was soundproof. I watched him mouth the words silently, a pantomime of greed and rage. I turned my back on him. I walked toward the exit door. I felt a lightness in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. The cord was cut. The weight was gone. I walked out of the prison and into the bright, blinding sunlight of the parking lot. I climbed into my truck. It wasn't a new truck. It was the same Ford I had driven for 10 years, but today it felt like a chariot. I rolled down the windows, letting the fresh air flush out the smell of the prison. On the passenger seat sat a framed photograph of Beatrice. Next to it was a brand new graphite fishing rod still in its packaging. I reached over and touched the photo. We did it, Bé, I said. It is finished. I started the engine. The rumble of the motor was a comforting sound. I wasn't going back to the city. I wasn't going back to the shadows of the past. I had rented a cabin 3 hours north, up near the Canadian border, where the lakes were cold and deep, and the phone signal was weak. I pulled out onto the highway heading west. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in streaks of purple and gold. I checked the rearview mirror one last time. The prison was shrinking in the distance, becoming nothing more than a gray smudge on the horizon. I smiled. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't Henry the victim. I wasn't Henry the widower. I was just Henry. I had a full tank of gas, a good fishing rod, and a clear conscience. They say that revenge is a dish best served cold, but I have learned that justice is not about revenge. It is about restoring balance. It is about protecting the things that matter. Love, loyalty, dignity. And sometimes the only way to protect those things is to be willing to burn down the weeds that threaten to choke them. My name is Henry Caldwell. I am 68 years old, and my life is just beginning. If you have ever had to cut toxic family out of your life to save yourself, let me know in the comments below. It is a hard road, but I promise you the view from the other side is worth it. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories of justice and truth. Stay strong, stay vigilant, And never let anyone make you feel like you are worth less than you are. See you in the next story.